In Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS Episode 2 titled Catch the Windstorm Axis, Yusaku Fujiki around the 16-minute mark goes into the data storm and activates a skill called the Storm Axis. And Yusaku was very similar to Tim in Episode 1 of Yu-Gi-Oh! He didn't have the mental fortitude to move on, and then he thought of 3 reasons why he has to win this duel, no matter what. The number 1 reason being to reclaim my lost past. Number 2 being to rescue Kusanagi's brother from the darkness. And number 3 being to meet the person who gave me courage. And I'm joined with Dimsy's Domain as we discuss the number 1 reason. And on his channel, we're going to be discussing the number 3 reason and giving our thoughts and predictions. So Dimsy, what are your thoughts on what Yusaku's past could be, along with the flashback that we got in VRAINS Episode 2?
I think honestly it's extremely dark. I think that they kind of showcase from the visuals that his past is some sort of child trafficking, something where is something maybe to do with him being kidnapped, or just these children who were programmed to do something. So you know how in a lot of documentaries, because I know everyone likes documentaries, and your commenters are just extremely intelligent, where they've seen a lot of stuff, but there's a lot of shows where you see how there's certain companies, there's certain organizations, certain gangs where they prey on children and they prey on people who are very vulnerable, and they try to mold them into this child weapon. Now, for those of you who've watched Logan, a lot of the gist of the movie is the fact that they artificially created these kids, or they artificially inserted powers into these kids, and they cultivated them to be warriors, emotionless warriors. I honestly think that Yusaku's past was something along those lines, where he was coerced into doing something which he really didn't want to do, or really he had no capacity to kind of calculate and understand what the hell they're doing. And this is where the whole thing about how does Yusaku have cyber monsters, how does Yusaku have these links to certain things which are foregone in the past. For example, when they said, cyber monsters are still a thing, so that makes you wonder, okay, cyber monsters must be linked with either SOL or Knights of Hanoi or something completely different. And it makes you wonder, Yusaku's past is very, very, very dark, and just the tone and the music and the visuals when they showcase his childlike self is very intriguing, and it makes it look very dark, gloomy, and somewhat scary.
Yeah, very similar to Halo. If you guys are fans of Halo, we know that Dr. Halsey created the Spartan program, which basically grabbed children when they were younger, took them away from their parents, and created clones for the parents to have, and over time they died from natural causes. And what Halsey did was get these children and create them into elite warriors. And could that be what SOL or Knights of Hanoi were trying to do? I don't think they were trying to create elite soldiers, rather use them as test dummies. And that might be the case, simply because if we look at Yusaku's face, it's bruised. Now, there's a lot of things that could play into that. Maybe Yusaku's running away, he probably fell on something, but he looked seriously bruised on his face. And what comes to mind is probably some sort of testing or some sort of torturement on these little children in VRAINS, and maybe that's why Yusaku is very much scarred. He's very much driven to take revenge, to reclaim his lost time.
And do you reckon, and this is where it's a major question, but do you think they're going to be dark enough? Do you think Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS is dark enough and bold enough to tell such a mature storyline?
That's hard, because Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS is meant for 4th graders. It's meant for middle school children. And I don't think middle school children are, they're not prepped for that. But the thing is, I think at this time and at this like year and era and time, I think people can sort of see that without parents getting mad. So I think they could possibly go for that route.
Yeah, because the whole lost time really does resonate, that he's been abducted and his life has been somewhat taken away from him. And once again, for all of you lot who are anime fans, if you look and if you've watched Fairy Tail, I know, yes, jokes aside, it's a very crappy ass manga and anime, but Urza Scarlet, who is the main woman in Fairy Tail, used to be a slave, and she used to work in a slave mine. She was working as a slave, so they could easily do this, and that is still a shonen for the same target audience, so they can always go through that route as well. Also with Yusaku's lost time, it does really bleed into the second point where he spoke about Kusanagi's brother still in the darkness. So what if Yusaku was in the darkness, and spoiler alert for my video, the person who inspired him took him out of that same darkness, but Kusanagi's brother still in the same predicament, the same position that Yusaku was in many years ago.
And not only that, when we see birds at a young age, what comes to mind? The fact that they can fly away from their issue. And maybe that's why birds are such a big theme in VRAINS. We don't know what the message is yet, but we've seen them tease in intros along with some scenes in Yusaku's past especially. So maybe when Yusaku was in the darkness, he was looking at birds and he saw the light through there, as birds are very much the passageway to freedom as they fly away. And the thing with birds are, if they have an issue, you just fly away. You go away from the issue.
And I think that it's very similar to when we got early spoilers and early news regarding Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS and what it's all about, take a step and just try whatever. And that's very similar to your analogy about birds, where you need to take a step and try to fly, and if you fall down, try again, but you need to fly away, because sometimes that's the only way for you to go, because you can't walk away, you can't run away, you need to fly away. And as you can see, when they're riding the data storm, if you do fall, it's very dangerous. So the whole notion of the way to escape, the way to move forward, is maybe not as conventional as walking or running, but it might just be flying or surfing or riding away. And it makes you really interested in Yusaku's character, the layers of character plot points and just things they could really explore from that small snippet of my lost time is so interesting. And we could talk about this all day, and I think that this is one of the most interesting things and exciting things about Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS, about it being his lost time. Now, we've spoken about what if he was in some sort of child trafficking or some sort of slave labor camp or along the lines. Do you lot have any other ideas? If you do comment it down below, because we do have a little series called if it's on BYG Aigami's channel, it's called Fan Theory Friday. So if you have your fan theory, you never know, it could be featured on the Fan Theory Friday.
So the second point is to bring Kusanagi's brother out of the darkness. There's a lot of things that come to mind. When I think of darkness, I think of Yami Merrick, I think of Yami Bakura. I just think of purple, because that's very much the color for darkness in Yu-Gi-Oh!
Do you think about they could go through the route that we saw in GX, where we saw Night Shroud? Do you think they could do something like that?
Possibly. I mean, anything's possible for VRAINS at this point.
And the little scene, because this is very important. I know we've spoken about the first one, but this second reason is very important because it gives extra context to the first one, and also gives extra context to the build-up of the third point, which is also talking about the person who inspired him. But I think that if they go through the route where it's like Night Shroud and their siblings and that, so you could have the same little dynamic between Kusanagi and his brother. His brother might be an emissary for the Knights of Hanoi, or an emissary for SOL technology, and it makes you think that, hey, was Yusaku at one point on the same path? Could he have been an emissary or just a instrument of a distraction for one of these other parties or this other third party? So having just this notion that Kusanagi's brother's still in the darkness and they need to save him, it doesn't mean that he's in some sort of prison. It doesn't mean that, like, if you lot are fans of the Flash TV series, where we have now that the speedsters can be trapped in the Speed Force, but they're in this jail cell, not jail cell, but this mental torture, but they're immobile. That's not the case. I don't think that's the case. I think that he has Kusanagi's brother has lost his way, and he's a baddie. He's a bad guy. So what they need to do is they need to inspire him once again to get him onto the good side and just make him find his passion and just the light inside his heart too. And that's the way to free him. And that's what happened to Yusaku. I think that he was freed. Light was inserted into his heart, and they need to do that with the second one. And how that plays into the first point, talking about his lost time, it might just be that he was a villain. Yusaku was actually a bad guy. Or maybe he was just working for a bad organization or under the thumb of a bad organization. That was his lost time.
Yeah, I agree. Let's just talk about the third reason, but that's going to be on your channel. And Dimsy and I are going to be discussing about who could that person be that gave Yusaku courage. So I'll leave that down below. Thank you for coming by, Dimsy. Check out the Facebook and Twitter fan page regarding Yu-Gi-Oh! VRAINS, and see you guys later.